My name is Don Taylor, and I work for the Middle Grades Collaborative. And on behalf of the Middle Grades Collaborative and the Tarrant Institute for Innovative Education, I'd like to welcome everybody. I would really appreciate it if everybody could just introduce themselves and tell us just a little bit about what they do and their role. And what I'm going to ask, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. And then Sarah, if you can just pick one other, just pass it right along. So Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Popowitz, and I am a program director with Up for Learning. And I will pass it to Evelyn.
Hello, everybody. My name's Evelyn Monhay. I am a senior at Winooski High School and also a youth program specialist at Up for Learning. And I will pass it to Lindsay.
I was just thinking there's a lot of Up for Learning here. Lindsay Hallman, Executive Director with Up for Learning. I will pass it to Meg.
Hi there, Meg O'Donnell. I teach humanities to 7th and 8th graders at Shelburne Community School, and part of some other, I'm not quite really part of Up for Learning, but I believe in it wholeheartedly and I love what you do. And I had a lovely time participating in the Power Squared experience. So I'll share that.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, everybody. This is our ninth.
Wait, I haven't gone yet.
Maura. Oh, sorry, Maura.
I am Maura Wheeler. I'm the Proficiency-Based Learning and Technology Integration Coach at the Lamoille South School District. And I'm a big fan of Up for Learning as well.
I apologize. I got distracted because Meg started talking about the events she's attended, and that got me thinking about my events, and that I'm totally sorry about that. Sorry. That's where I am right now. But first of all, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I'm hopeful that this is just going to be kind of a exhale type of webinar where we can kind of start reflecting on where we've been this year, which has been an incredibly unique year for a lot of reasons. And just to kind of check in with everybody about what's happened, where you are right now, and where you think you're headed. So I guess the first question is, as we head towards the end of hopefully once in a lifetime school year, what have you noticed about your practice or your organization or the young people you've been working with? What are some of your observations as we kind of come to a close of a really unique school year? And again, we'll start with Sarah and just go right through.
Yeah, that's a big question, but as you were stating it again, the words flexibility and resilience were the first two words that popped into my head. I feel like we've all learned to be super flexible in so many different ways, just within our own thinking, within our own boundaries of what we feel like we can and can't do. There was a lot going into this year where I was like, I don't think I can teach like that or facilitate like that, or I'm not sure that. And you figure it out, or, you find ways to be flexible. And then resiliency in just keep showing up, right? Like the fact that our youth and our adults and our leaders and our facilitators and our community members, like they just kept showing up and being there and being flexible and holding it together in the best ways possible to make this year what it was. And for everything this year wasn't, it was in so many ways as well. There's so many things to celebrate from this year as well. So I think flexibility and resilience.
I think for me, a lot of it's been a little bit odd, both because I think as a young person in school and as someone who holds space for young learners and youth, one of the things that I think a lot of folks have gained or built on is confidence and leadership skills. And the amount of young people that I've seen who have taken initiative and really dived into their work and has been unparalleled. And then in addition to that, like the confidence to ask questions and to push boundaries and wonder about the possibilities of what school could look like, which I think is really phenomenal. And I think this year has created space for a lot of really deep thinkers to create real change, both with that like a PAT youth adult partnership, but then also just young people who are engaged and driven to create a new way of learning as we transition back into full in-person learning.
I think for me, what stands out is relationships, new relationships, deeper relationships, more connections with people that perhaps I would have never connected with. And stronger relationships with my youth partners as well. Really living into the youth adult partnership piece fully, like whole heart, mind, body, everything just feels so. I feel like the relationships this year is what kept me going. And I was also thinking about the curiosity piece and the truth telling. So like curiosity to be brave enough to ask the questions, and then also the truth telling to be brave enough to, when something is not right, to speak your truth and to say this is not okay, or this is harmful, or I'm not sure that's actually going to work, and this is why. So I just feel like those are kind of the themes of my year: relationships, curiosity, and truth telling.
I think something that I'm reflecting on is just echoing the flexibility and resiliency that Sarah was talking about. And I think even in addition to that is that adaptability. We continue to pivot, right? We're continually asked to sort of like show up for 2 days a week, show up for 3 days a week, show up for 4 days a week. And the kids have been right there with us. And then we asked them to do SBACs and they adapted. And then we created, we've been sort of trying to create these activities in the afternoon to sort of like build some team and sense of, because we're finally back together, like all of us together. And that's been simultaneously lovely and exhausting, just on the planning end of it. But to me, it's adaptability, and it's then showing up authentically. Like I just was tired today. The kids were tired. They got a little like, what, like whiny. And I was like, it just hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't had to like, I haven't felt that like classroom culture showing the kids really showing up as their authentic selves. And I just was like, oh, right. These are like middle school kids who don't want to like, they don't always want to do what we think is so much fun, like a slow roll challenge. Anyway, I guess what I'm just saying is like, important reminders about how well we've adapted and pivoted, and why it's important to show up authentically, to whine sometimes, or it's okay to like, I don't know, it's just okay to be authentic about like, wow, this doesn't feel, we're carrying a lot of emotion, I guess, around as we, sort of step back into our real world forward, schools normal, things are opening up, and we just lived through this incredible experience. And I don't know that we've always made time to debrief that authentically with kids, I guess. I'm not sure. Just thinking, a lot of thinking.
I could echo a lot of what themes have come up for other people. I think for me, collaboration, support is another big one. I think for me, our new way of being and working together has been really interesting, and we've been able to collaborate in different ways, both like students across schools who aren't in physical buildings together. We've been connecting older students and younger students for mentoring that before we would have said, well, how are they going to get there? And I think we're, some of those questions that have held us back from really creatively thinking about either restructuring schools or doing what's best for students. We now have new ways of thinking about it, and the but why. I think we now can say like, but why not? And get to a different place than maybe where we had limitations before, which I do think will help us serve students better. And then in terms of support, like I've seen, I know myself, I've felt more supported by teammates this year than I have in the past, and just how we work together has been really different. I think people have had to show up in a different way than we have before, and even just thinking about the past 18 months since this first began. And I also think that we've thought differently about how to support students, like keeping the cohort smaller or adding an extra adult in, and some of those things we've learned that it really serves students well to have those supports and relationships. And there is so much more that we need to do. But thinking ahead towards next year, like one of my worries would be that now that things are opening up, it's not a return to school like a normal year. Like there is healing that still needs to happen. There is connection that needs to happen. Like we can't go into a normal summer and right back into it like this. We have some real work ahead of us for thinking about how we repair and reimagine schools moving forward.
Thank you very much. And before I sort of address this question, welcome, Kevin. Kevin, do you want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Thanks, Don. Kevin Peoria Hunt. I'm a 5'8" generalist on Swift House at Williston Central School.
And Kevin, we're just wrapping up the first question, which was, as we head towards the end of a once-in-a-lifetime school year, what have you noticed about your practice, your organization, or the young people you work with? And I guess one of the things that has been really a support is sort of this group of collaborators, not only for the insights, but also a little bit of the, I wouldn't say challenges, but Lindsay said something in our last webinar about we need to be the risk takers. And that kind of really stuck with me about taking those risks. And I also, one of the things that, if anything has come out of this year for me, is the primacy of youth voice. Because back in January, we were having these webinars. Evelyn was part of that group, and other kids, student partners were coming on and talking to us about the need for having these important conversations about what was happening in the world and about how important those are. And I keep going back to that because recently I've had to trust our student partners, and trusting those student partners and giving them the responsibility has just been, it's just a reminder of how powerful and how extraordinary their voices can be as we kind of move through a really unusual situation. And Sarah has been extremely helpful this year, and last night our student partners presented to the school board. And basically, I showed up and said, this is who I am, and I handed it over to those student partners, and they were just unbelievable. And so how do we provide opportunities for all of our students to do that? And how do we take those risks so that we can make our practice more welcoming and supportive for all students? And those are things that I'm really batting around right now in my head, and I know how I'm going to take those forward. And so, Kevin, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I would honestly just echo a lot of what you just said in terms of, how can we do a better job at getting out of the way at times when it's needed. And I know we had that our last CPS retreat yesterday, and that was one of the things we talked about in a breakout room is, you know, as a middle school teacher, it's such a almost perfect storm, right? Of you have these kids, for me, 5th through 8th grade, who come in like they crave independence, right? They need it, they deserve it, they want it, but they also crave structure and need structure. And it's like finding that nice balance and marriage between those two things, where we're supporting them in ways, but without limiting their voice. I know this has been a pretty, you know, eye-opening year in a lot of ways, and just hearing what the kids have to say about a lot of these big issues coming up. And I think it's just important that, I think I caught the tail end of what Maura was saying, that we don't take a step back to, you know, normal school and get back to normal, and we keep moving in the right direction.
Thank you very much. And Joe Rivers has joined us. Joe, you want to just introduce yourself and your role? And wait a minute, and the story behind that beautiful T-shirt that you're wearing. I already have envy. Go ahead.
Joe Rivers at Brattleboro Area Middle School, and that's BAMS for short, and that's why the T-shirt's there. And it was just, it's a hot day, so I'm in my basement trying to do some Zooming with the students, and this is what came out in my closet.
So Joe, the first question we asked is, after this year, or as we come into the tail end of this year, what are some of the things that you've noticed about your practice and the young people that you've been working with? Do you have any, as we begin sort of, somebody mentioned healing, you know, it feels like we need to spend time healing and reflecting, and part of this webinar is based on that, starting that reflection process. And do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Well, I think a word that comes to mind right away is collaboration. That during this time, and in my role as a remote teacher, we've done a lot of collaborating, students and teachers together, young and old people, trying to figure out what we want to learn together, and then to go through that process. So I've enjoyed that aspect of it, and I think the young people that we've been working with have as well, having a little more freedom and the ability to chase stories that are interesting to them, as well as my expectations around practicing reading, writing, speaking, listening again, and those sorts of things. So I hope to be able to continue that as we head back into the buildings, that idea of collaborating more than dictating.
All right, thank you very much. Excuse me. So this is the next question. Excuse me, and I didn't know quite how to phrase this, but social justice, equity, and anti-racist action have been central themes of this year. We've talked about it quite a bit on this webinar. And how have those movements impacted your practice, either reinforced what you're already doing, or changed your perspective, or made you think in new ways about what you're doing in the classroom? And we'll start with Sarah.
Yeah, our year has definitely revolved around these themes in so many ways, with all teams of youth and adults that we've been working with in some way or another. And I think seeing the natural connection and need that youth were like looking for, like they wanted to have conversations, they wanted a place to explore topics, to learn dialogue practice, and then to not only to do that, right, to learn from each other, to have dialogue, to sort of like have a place to process and discuss what was happening in our world, but then to sort of look around and say, all right, what are our next steps? Where are we going to take this now? How can we actually begin to see this action within our own community and be the voice for that? And so watching that unfold before our eyes was one of the most powerful things that I was involved with. I think UP was involved with this year with youth groups. And I'm sure Evelyn and Lindsay will echo a lot of what I'm saying and expand further. So, that definitely has changed, I think, the way that we work with all school teams moving forward, for sure.
Yeah, definitely echoing all that Sarah just said. I feel like it's such a major piece of what UP is all about, and has allowed us like to dive further into it and find ways to embody that. I think for me, more specifically on a personal level, because like I feel like my practices, and a part of being an UP is like practice is part of just who you are and how you choose to be in the world. And so for me, it's been, I feel like a lot of these themes are really just who I am and who I choose to be and who I choose to surround myself with. And so I'm just looking at the question. I think it's been a major shift for me within the past year of sort of shifting with COVID from, gotta graduate to what does my life look like and how does education support me on my journey to like being who I want to be and doing what I want to do. And these themes have such a major piece in that. And it's been, I think, pulling it back to like that relational pieces. I've made such incredible relationships with so many new folks because of my interest and commitment to this work. And I think that has in turn changed my practice, and then also thinking about what I want my school to look like and what I choose to be involved in. I think making these a priority has been a definite shift in how I choose to move forward with my education.
I was essentially going to say basically what Evelyn said, and but what I don't see those as central themes or movements. I see those as my personal and professional values. Those are my core values. So for me, I get to live into those every day. And if I'm not, then I'm not doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing. And so central themes of this year, those have been my core values my entire life. And maybe they've just, become more amplified, perhaps. But for me, we talk a lot at UP about, well, recently we've been talking a lot about values and purpose, and how do you design your day, your professional and personal life around your values, so that you always are living into your values. And and I feel like that's just the way in which my life is, like those are the values that are most important to me, and therefore that's the work that I am doing. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't see those as movements or themes. I just think that's our work. And at Up for Learning, our core value is seek equity and justice. So if we're not doing that every day in all of our work, then we're not living into our mission. So for me, those are values, and hopefully other people have identified those as their core values too. Maybe they just surfaced in different ways this year. And for young people as well, just to know that those are values that we hold inside. And so maybe they're just more amplified now more than ever. And so hopefully people can see them not as movements, but as core values of humanity.
Thanks for that, Linz. I think something I echo that as well. Like I find it absolutely imperative that it's a natural that conversations around social justice, equity, being anti-racist as an educator, I'm still on my journey for that. Like I wholeheartedly believe it. It's how do I break down what I think I'm supposed to teach so that I move away from the shoulds to the musts, and doing that with messy, like just stepping in it and like making mistakes and I think something I've learned so much this year about just all of that, again, like having these opportunities through Zoom, being able to attend different workshops or other experiences is just the power of listening and then providing that opportunity for my kids, like making sure that we, I love what you said, Kevin, about the balance of student voice and choice, and they crave that and they crave structure. So what are structures that I can put in place so that it's a natural place for discussion and conversation around topics that are hard. And I think that's been an important shift in my practice this year, is just listening so closely. And it was hard sometimes to listen to the youth when it was like, oh, I missed it. Instead of regretting what I didn't do, let's just think about what I can do. And that has been, that's been, really exciting and fun and hard, but all good, all good.
Thank you, Meg. I think when I think about equity and social justice and anti-racist teaching, this year especially, thinking of those as being central to the work, so not as an aside, but being, everything that our work, everything that we bring to our work. I think this year, and COVID in particular, has led me and my team to work with community partners in ways that we haven't before, and other community agencies and families, and using them and partnering with them in a lot of our work and in getting feedback in ways that we haven't sought out in the past, which I think has been pretty transformative for us, and a practice that has been really helpful. I think I've learned that I really can't do this work on my own or on a team alone, that you really need support from others, and to get feedback from others, and hard feedback from others as part of this process. And I think that's been really transformative, and something that I hope continues. I know will continue, because I think it's something that it's just such a key component of growth, and making our schools more equitable. So I would say the partnerships with communities would be the step that I would take away from this year.
Thanks, Maura. Actually, Meg, as you were talking, I was looking down at my notes when this question was posed, and I wrote to myself, encourage me to listen more and think about how I can do my job as a teacher to create that brave space. So I'm gonna echo what Meg was saying, and that's a big thing this year, is just like recognizing that our kids want this work, they want these conversations, they're ready for these conversations. And for me, it was just like, I love the conversations we've had at this group, because it made me change some of my practices and rethink about the way I'm setting up these spaces and creating these spaces, like to not over schoolify things, and just being able to have like these conversations without assessments looming or making sure we're hitting targets. Like, let's just allow these kids to be creative in their own ways and get in the weeds of this stuff, and get that passion out that way without having to worry about, oh, well, we need to complete this worksheet on this or do a close reading on this. Like, just having that space for it has been super powerful. And then, they do the work, they want to do the work, which is great. And the other piece for me is I've been just really working with some other people in the district too. It's just, you find your allies, and you typically, you gravitate toward those people, but I'm also been working like, how can I use my passion toward this to bring others in and not like, I want to make sure people aren't feeling like an outcast because they're not doing this work yet. Because I think we're all on the spectrum. I feel like I'm at the very beginning part of this, and I just want to continue to grow. I think so many people want to be there. So I'm like, how can we keep inviting people to the table and, using our values, like Lindsay was talking about, like we all care so deeply about this stuff as part of who we are. Like, how can we bring them to the table, let them see that, and let them see how, important this work is with our kids and how we can do it. Without saying, making it feel like it's this grand thing that you need to work up to. It's like, we just, I think having a community approach to it's going to be huge moving forward. And the collaboration with this group's been profound in so many ways for this work. So thank you all for that.
I echo what you just said there, Kevin, about the collaboration being really helpful in causing me to think differently about how to approach the task I have with students. For me, I think this, I don't know if struggle is the right word, but the challenge has been to make the time I spend with students relevant to them. And that's been how I've had to shift the way that I approach things. It is bringing relevance to the time together. And these topics, social justice, equity, anti-racism, certainly blend into the conversations that we have. I think what's changed is that they're central to just about every conversation we have now, and they're not peripheral. And I tend to focus on place-based learning and localize the work that we do. And so being able to connect those issues with what's happening or what has happened in our place has made a difference. Trying to bring some context to the conversations that we have through stories of what's happened before. And so that those have been the things I've tried to bring forward this time because of the issues that are out there now. For example, today we talked about the Statue of Liberty and its connection to Brattleboro. The person who designed the pedestal to the Statue of Liberty was a person who was born here in town. And at the same time that the Statue of Liberty was being constructed, George Edmonds of Edmonds Middle School fame was the senator of Vermont and was advocating in Washington, D.C. for the Chinese not being able to immigrate to the United States. And so the Chinese Exclusion Act was supported by Edmonds, who happened to be a guy who had a lot of money and donated some land and got a middle school named after him. But also he was pretty racist. And so that situation that was happening in the 1880s here in Vermont is happening now. And so the issues aren't new necessarily, but the conversations and the dialogue that happens about the conflict in our society is different now. I think we're talking about things differently now than we were in the 1880s.
Thank you all for those thoughts. I would just echo that these conversations have deeply impacted my practice and the way that I think about my practice. And I would, like Kevin, I am probably towards the beginning of this journey, but I've found that both collaborating and also looking at the events that have happened have made the conversations that Joe's talking about immediate and necessary, and that the kids are ready for it. And I think that's really changed how I've been thinking about what's happening in my classroom in order to, I think Dr. Janet Helms had this podcast, Teaching While White. I think Meg listened to that. And one of her quotes was, the kids might not be talking about it, but they're thinking about it, and that you need to bring that reality to the classroom. And so that also had a really big impact on sort of the last part of my school year here. And I mean, I just kind of wanted to meet with everybody and hear how things were going. And I guess just the next question is just kind of, we're not that anybody's counting, but we're getting fairly close to the end of the year. And, we're not quite, I haven't quite got that feeling yet. There's a feeling, I don't know if all of you have that feeling where, I mean, on a day like today, you'll be outside and it might come pretty soon. And all of a sudden you're like, holy smokes, we're almost at the end of our learning expedition, and it's getting close. And you start getting into that. There's a lot of emotions. I forget who said that earlier, but there's a lot of emotions we're carrying around. And when we finish, at least when I finish with my pod, I think we're a pretty tight group, and it's just going to be interesting to see how that ends up, because our kids have just done such a great job, and I'm just so proud of them. And we're almost at the end here. So I guess just the last question is, what are your hopes for the next few months and year? And what are you looking forward to on the horizon as we, and I guess just before I say, as we come out of the pandemic, that would only be for our communities and our location. There's people across the world who are still really struggling with this, and I've been thinking about them quite a bit. But as we start to maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel, at least for our area, what are your hopes for the next few months and year, and what are you looking forward to?
I am really, I'm really excited to see our new sort of innovations take shape, right? Like, we've been working through this year knowing, everything's changing. We got to be flexible. We got to, like someone said, pivot on the dime and and be resilient. And it's like we're recognizing more and more what's necessary, what would be the best way to help teams to reach out to schools, like really looking at our own programming and saying, is this really the best way to deliver what we know schools need, what we know youth and adults need? Is this really changing the system the way we want to change it? And how can we use what we've learned this year to really rethink and be creative and be innovative, which we've been doing. And so working through all of that is so exciting to me as a program director, and working specifically with our youth partners around shaping that innovation has been the most exciting part. And so while we don't get like summer as a classroom teacher, I'm really excited for our summer work, and that just is really invigorating to me. And then so excited to jump into next year, hopefully riding on this wave of like, we don't want to go back, we don't want to look back and go back. So I'm really hoping that everyone is in a good place come fall to really dive in and get creative and take those leaps that maybe districts were afraid to do before that door might be opening. We're really hoping it's opening, and so we can start to scooch in and get some of those larger changes that we know everyone's craving. I just feel like the time is right now. So that part is super exciting to me.
I have a lot of joy coming up for me. I'm graduating high school, and which feels really weird. Woohoo, yeah, graduating high school and really looking forward to that. And then with that transition into college, like really excited for how I can continue to do my work and support it through higher education. Um, and also summer camp is starting up soon, and I love summer camp. It's like my favorite thing on planet Earth. I'm so excited to see the kiddos again, and we have mostly returnees, and it's going to be, I think, one of our biggest years now that a lot of stuff has been lifted. So just thinking about how to hold that, and we have a lot more people, like adults, to help hold it all, and I'm just feeling really excited for that growth and transition. More work-wise, there's a lot of stuff going on up that I'm really psyched to take part of and begin dreaming about. I have a really good friend of mine, Addie, who some of you may know, that we were talking about it. I think in the last like 3 days, I think we've been on the phone for like 7 hours and just been talking about what we want to do and how we're going to change the world. And it's really exciting to be in community with folks who are just like enamored with how to create real systemic change and what does it look like and how do we do it to support others. And so looking forward to all the magical adventures that we're going to be on to do so. And yeah, just really excited for all of those changes. I'm just looking at the question again. Yeah, all of those things that are coming up, looking forward to. And this is like something that I just found out today, but one of our school board members is resigning. So I'm like interested in thinking about what it could look like to be on the school board, because I do a lot of work with them and they need someone who is young and BIPOC and female. Sorry, y'all. So I'm excited for that and wanting to know more about what that could look like. So there's a lot going on that I'm filled with joy about, and I'm really excited to hear y'all's too.
Thank you. I think for the next few months, I am my hopes are to have some time to process and reflect on the last like 16 months in my new role with my team, and just thinking about what evolved and emerged over the past year plus, as we all were evolving and adapting and emerging into new spaces and new ways of doing things. And so I'm looking forward to some time just to process all that and get a little clearer about what's next. And then as far as like my hopes for next year would be back to the first question, like what were the themes for me? Like my hopes are relationships, curiosity, and truth telling. Like if we don't continue along that line, then yikes. So that's my hopes for next year, is that all the words that we put out in the beginning of our time today are just pushed forward and take new shape.
Evelyn, I just wanted to say thank you, because listening to you talk, I get so hopeful. I'm so excited. I'm excited for your graduation. That sounds awesome. And yes, please go out for the school board. We need more youth voices on, absolutely, we need youth voices on our leadership committees. I am hopeful. We do have a countdown actually on our board. The kids have been updating it every day, and it's shockingly already in the single digits. So because of the way we don't have Wednesdays, and so they don't count that as a school day, but it is a school day anyhow. So oh yeah, well, not quite in the single digits. One more day and then we'll be there. Anyway, what I'm looking forward to is having space with my colleagues. We were on a new team last year and then stepped away in COVID, and then a teacher retired and a new one joined us, and we haven't had a time to like connect as colleagues. And we've had the opportunity in these morning walks. Maura, I think about you all the time in Peoples, because there's some things that we have adapted into our daily routines that have just been lovely and wonderful and kid-centered and just relaxed. And it's been really joyful. And I want to keep those routines and just build on what we've learned from this year, and not succumb to agendas that are not focused on kids and learning and student voice, and making sure that whatever we're doing, the kids' voice is up front and center. So I am hopeful, and I'm looking, and it will require quite a bit of energy and stamina, and I'm lacking a little bit of both right now, but I know they'll come back. I get that from you guys, so I appreciate this opportunity to connect.
I appreciate you saying that, Meg. When the question was first posed of hopes, I was like, what are my hopes right now? Sometimes it's hard to think of them, but July, I work year round as a part of the leadership team, and July is this like magical month that all year we say, oh, let's put aside some time in July. And so our July is now like 3 years long, our list of things that we want to really like think deeply about and reflect on, and innovate, and just like do some really like creative out of the box thinking. July tends to be that time that we have space to do it without sort of like the day-to-day pieces. And so we also have some leadership transitions happening. So we'll be sort of a newly forming team. And we also have a lot of new teachers coming in the fall. And I just think, you know, there's two pieces. One is sort of like reflecting on this year and what's happened, and the things that we've sort of like our flexibility and how we've thought differently about how we do things in schools. And then we also have new people coming in who can share their experiences and start to reimagine and rethink about our structures and the ways that we do things within our system. And so I think that's really energizing to me, even though, you know, I also am so deeply craving a break or a pause, you know, for myself to take a deep breath. You know, I'm very excited about that work. And at the same time, we're already talking about how we welcome students back in the fall, and what opportunities we have in the summer to engage with families and students, and really specifically like students who have been disengaged in learning over the past year and a half, because it hasn't worked for everyone. And so how do we work with our community and events around our community to re-engage with families? And so I think that's really hopeful and exciting. So I think there's some good stuff happening, and it's that combination of, you know, how do we take stock and create space for really reflecting on, and I'll use the word healing from previously, like how are we not only moving forward, but making sure that we're like deeply caring for one another so that we can do the good work moving forward.
So a couple years ago, I took part in a workshop, an amazing educator, a guidance counselor in our district. And Meg was in that workshop with me. It was an equity workshop. And I've been in touch with her. She's definitely an interrupter in our district. And I always like get emails from her, like calling out for my allies, like this is what we have going on. And it was actually after one of our meetings where Sam was talking about the work he was doing with Stamped. And I was like, holy crap, like I'm doing work with Stamped too. And we're in the same district. And how have we not, like, and Sam's a buddy of mine, and we just somehow, you know, ships crossed and we didn't get a chance to connect beforehand or even know that was happening. So I had reached out to her being like, hey, is there a chance we can like set up a group to just collaborate and hear what people are doing? And like, I would love to get new ideas and just hear what successes and challenges people have been having in this work. So in doing that, it's taken on this grassroots initiative of upending the entire system. So we're putting a lot of PD hours in this summer. We're coming up with post-service, pre-service work. We now have like K through 12 teachers involved and thinking about curriculum alignment and just making sure that we're getting people to the table to have conversations and create space. Both I'm eager for it. It's going to be a lot of work, and I'm really excited to have these conversations and get into it, and just be working with a lot of colleagues who are excited about the work, and call those in who haven't done this work yet, but we need to. So that's both a little frightening, and I'm very hopeful about it. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and hopefully it goes someplace and doesn't just become another thing that we check a box for PD hours, or becomes like one thing we do this month, which I think we have the right people right now who are pushing for that. Interrupting the system a little bit. So I'm excited to be a part of that work.
The things that Maura was talking about really resonated for me. I think we're at a transition again, where we've gone through this thing that we've never done before, but now we're transitioning to something else. And whenever there's transition, there's the opportunity to lose things. And we have many marginalized students through this last process that we've gone through. Students who are in remote and disengaged, students who are in the building and disengaged for various reasons. And that's a real concern of mine. And so for the next few months, I'm serving on the district recovery team that we're all supposed to have in each school district, and trying to put thought and energy into I can't think of it, remember they talk about safety nets and just that idea that everybody moves forward, that we don't leave anybody behind. And during this time, there's been some of that. And so some people have to go through and try to pick those pieces up and bring them forward. And so that's what I want to try to do for the next this next stretch, is just try to reach out to those families and the students who got pushed off to the side or couldn't figure out how to handle what we just went through in a way that they feel good about. We have a fair number of those folks, and our school district needs to be part of whatever's next for them. And so I'm excited about the fact that this recovery effort has incorporated outside agencies. It's not just the schools that are trying to figure this out. And I think that's what Maura was referring to. It just that mental health and social services are working with schools to try to go forward with whatever's going to be next for us, because we're more than just a place where kids come to learn how to read and write, and so we need to work with the other agencies to help make that happen. So that's the next stretch.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, everybody. These are the types of thoughtful conversations that really get me thinking. And I want to congratulate Evelyn, the enthusiasm and the graduation. And I remember way back when, it's just such an exciting time for you. And I just hope that I just hope you just enjoy it. It's congratulations again. That's fantastic. And I would definitely second that you run for the school board. It sounds like you have a political career in front of you. That's a great way to start. For me, like many of you have already mentioned, finding time to reflect. I'm actually moving positions next year where I'm going to be doing a sustainability. What I used to do on the green team is now going to become a sustainability class for 5 through 8. And Sarah's been instrumental in helping me develop that. And so for me, it's like, what do I take with me that's worked? And what do I take with me that the folks here talk about all the time, which is youth voice, youth leadership, equity and incorporating all those relevant themes that kids need to know in a hands-on, engaging, and relevant way. And so taking time from what happened this year and then having some time to think about and kind of structure what I'm hoping for next year, that's a big one for me. But I have to say that right now, one of the things that's really on my mind is mindfulness and pacing. This is the first year that I've incorporated mindfulness on a daily basis. And I'm actually partnering with a community member right now who's coming in, and for some of our courageous conversations about racism and racial trauma in alignment with some of the books that we're reading, she has been teaching myself and the kids how to use mindfulness strategies to remain centered so that you can deal with complex and difficult topics. And that has really, it's really kind of been an eye opener. And it also has really, I think, helped me slow down my pace, because I think that pacing and how, we got to do this, 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 and this, I think that that wears kids out. And I think that for some kids, it makes it even more, hard, disengaging. And I think that the mindfulness piece kind of slows things down a little bit. And oddly enough, when you're in Zoom meetings and, Sarah was on a Zoom meeting with me last night, and there'll be these silences that make me deeply uncomfortable. And I've learned how to wait and to wait. And eventually our student partners just come through in the clutch. But that's kind of an example of just slowing down the pacing and just really being mindful about listening. And then also, it's not that big of a deal, just kind of bringing that more relaxed relational aspect. And which runs counter to a lot of my personality, but I'm learning and I'm working on it. And so it's on my checklist. So, but I really am hopeful that I can bring that into the new environment, because I think it's really important. And I think it really helps kids, as Joe was mentioning, who may have been pushed to the side or who need the extra support from a caring adult. So my hope is that that goes with me as I'm moving forward. I also hope that we can continue the work that we've done here. Believe it or not, this is the 6th year that we've had these webinars, and I want to just cordially invite all of you to continue participating. It's deeply meaningful and helpful to me to connect with all of you. You're very professional. You're outstanding at what you do, and I just deeply appreciate everything that you've brought to the table. And I also, Evelyn, you've brought just outstanding, strong, and articulate youth voice to our conversations, which just again reminds me of how important it is to have our student partners at the table. So thank you, everybody, for everything that you've done. And the other thing that I'm hopeful for is that I get to read and do a lot of fishing this summer. And I do my best reflecting at the end of a fishing rod. So hopefully we'll see a lot of that happening. But as we end here, again, just so much thanks to everybody. I hope that you get to that healing and get to that reflective time, and that you get to enjoy everything that Vermont summers have to offer. And I'm just going to leave it open if anybody has any last words. Otherwise, have a tremendous end to your year, or to this stretch that you're in. And we'll be seeing and talking to you soon. Thank you so much, everybody.